Welcome to the second episode of our Blue Planet Recontact series, everyone. We're really excited to dive into the rest of character creation. Before we get there, a few announcements that I'm also part of.
Yay, finally.
Hey, I'm back. It's me.
It's really good to have you back for these cold open.
I always forget until Monday, and then I'm like, oh, cold open.
Yeah.
And then you've already done it. And
it's usually Sunday evening, and I'm like, oh, I'm finally ready to do this now. And okay, the weekend's already gone, and I don't want to bug Amelia because it's Sunday evening.
You know, it's one of those, like, you get to a point in the editing where you're like, oh my God, I just want to be done. Like, I don't want to sit down and coordinate with somebody else and find time. Like, I just want to say my thing and I want to plug it into the episode and I want to not look at this anymore.
Absolutely.
And like, I totally get that. But we found time. So
we did. I'm thankful. So first up, the Blue Planet Kickstarter is going very strong right now. They've already blasted through all of their original stretch goals that they've had, and then they've actually brought in a second wave of goals, they called it. So
wave, get it?
I know. It's wonderful. Nothing like ocean puns in your ocean-based RPG. I was actually talking with Rich Howard the other day, and he mentioned how remarkable it was that some great C3 guests are actually part of this project in some way. Neil Powell, Taylor LaBreche, Rich Howard, of course, and of course, Jeff, who's the creator of the game. They have all been previously guests on the podcast.
So what you're saying is that we have a history of excellent guests, or that Jeff has really good taste in collaborators.
It's probably both.
That's probably both. Can we be the official podcast of Blue Planet?
That'd be nice. I'll talk to Jeff.
I don't think that we can. But.
I don't think we can.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't checked out the campaign yet, you can go into the show notes and check out the link that we have right there for you.
April is Podchaser's Reviews for Good month campaign. For every podcast or episode review left on their site, Podchaser will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels. If a creator responds to your review this month, they will double it. That's 50 cents for everybody playing along at home. Also, whether it's an episode review or a full podcast review, we'll queue it up for reading in our episodes in our call to action section at the end of each episode to thank you personally for bringing some joy and encouragement to us. They really do brighten up our day, and they also help folks find the show. So if you head over to Podchaser for our show link that will be in the episode notes, let us know what you think of the show or of an episode, and you will hear your little review read in the future.
Absolutely. I think that's all that we have for today's announcements. Enjoy the rest of the character creation system for Blue Planet, everyone.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Last time on Character Creation Cast, Jeff was creating a survivor mod, Amelia was creating a cognitive synergist, and I was creating a transhuman for our theoretical campaign of a mom-and-pop corporate espionage rural survival campaign turned family-owned private investigation firm. We're picking up right where we left off last time. Enjoy. All right, so what's next?
What's next is profile. And as I mentioned, this is kind of where you get some guiding lights for your character, but also the mechanisms by which you can advance your character. So you want to create a goal, a motivation, and an attitude for your character. And they're pretty self-explanatory just from their terms. But ideally, the goal is something that you want your character to work towards in the game. Now, maybe it doesn't align directly with the story that the moderator is going to tell, but we all go through events in our life that don't line up with our goals, right? But a good session 0 will help put those in alignment, and you can help your players meet some of those things. So the idea is that it's something pretty big. It's something you're not going to get done next week, right? It's a bigger thing. Maybe you want to be wealthy. Maybe you want to join the insurrection. Maybe you want to just go to college and get a degree and a big job. Maybe you want to move from the small town to the big city. Maybe you want to move from the big city to the small town. Some big goal like that's going to take time to get, that usually has resources associated with it and certainly has effort associated with it. Ideally, something that you could break up into chunks and sort of achieve benchmarks towards, because that would be more satisfying in play, rather than one day the moderator saying, okay, you have enough money to get that big biosculpting surgery you've been saving up for. You're done with your goal. Mm-hmm. And the goal, too, can change. In play, the goal can change dramatically, or a little bit, or dramatically, depending upon the narrative, too, which is nice. It's super flexible. Motivation is why you want that thing, right? What are you looking for? What do you think it's going to give you? Why are you driven towards it? What in your background makes you feel that you need that thing, or that that's what you're chasing? And then attitude is just who you are day to day. How do you engage with the world? Are you meek and quiet and accommodating? Are you boisterous and loud and always in people's faces? Are you aggressive? Are you kind? Are you a liar? Are you anything that kind of characterizes your general, what people would say in one sentence about how you behave, that kind of thing?
Okay.
I think my goal is to save our family business.
That is a great one.
My goal is to become a famous singer.
Mine is acceptance.
Ooh.
So for my motivation, I put corporate corruption sucks.
Nice.
I don't feel like that's really all of it, but I had to write it on the line. I think if we run this PI firm, like if we're subject to corporate takeover, then like who's going to stop them from messing everything up?
That makes sense.
Well, I think you have to have public stock before there can be a corporate takeover, right? So if we're a private business, maybe we're good.
Yeah, but maybe they're going to like run us into the ground.
That could definitely happen.
Yep.
And the thing to note is that Poseidon is the setting intentionally is supposed to have a kind of space Western feel to it, a frontier where, sure, there's laws, but their enforcement is even more uneven than our current society. And it really has to do with your geography and resources as much as it has to do with the laws themselves. So it's supposed to have a bit of a wild frontier feel to it. And so corporate takeovers could mean amphibious assault, right?
Yeah.
What is yours is now ours. Come do something about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. My motivation is going to be kind of a twofold thing. One, to add some more joy to Poseidon, but also to tell my story. And I'm thinking like in a kind of a like subtle underground sort of way, like something about the transhuman program or something that doesn't sit well.
That's cool. So like a folk singer almost, right? With all your anti-establishment songs.
Yeah.
My motivation is going to be loneliness.
Your character is so sad.
Well, but I was trying to come up with a term that was less sad than loneliness.
Yeah.
Like he just likes people. I feel like he's got a lot of love in his heart and he wants to use it. Just not sure how to do that.
Yeah.
And then for my attitude, I put logical and careful.
Gosh, what is my attitude going to be?
I'm going to have, my attitude is attentive, verging on clingy.
I'm going with hopeful, optimistic, and rebellious.
Nice. That's a cool combination. All right.
Yeah.
So that part's complete. Now we would do attributes. So we picked everyday characters. So we have no additional modifiers based on that power level to our attributes. You've already gotten your attribute modifiers from your species. And the only other attribute modifiers would be if you wanted to do some exchanges yourself between attributes. So you can drop an attribute by 1 and raise another attribute by an equal 1. The limit on that, just for some semblance of mechanical balance, is that without modification, humans range between -3 and +3. So the natural human state can't exceed +3 or go below -3. And of course, you don't have to modify anything if you don't want to.
I think I'm going to change a couple things. I think I'm going to put my physique to -2.
Ooh.
So I can up my coordination and psyche by 1.
Now, of course, if you like fighty characters, coordination and physique are pretty important. If you like thinky characters, cognition and psyche are pretty important. But, that's the fun of making a character. I know a lot of reputations in gaming are, power gaming, right? People love to be good at everything, but I love having to make the compromises and really leaning into what the character is good at, and then also leaning into what they're bad at. I love when a character who is not fighty has to do the fighty, and a character who is fighty has to do the thinky. That just makes for a much more enjoyable story.
I actually think I'm going to go all in on the -3 to physique, and bump up my cognition by 1 as well. So 2, 2, 1, -3 for those 4 stats.
Okay, now I should probably give you a little mechanical heads up, since it's not necessarily part of character creation, just so as you make those decisions, you're making them informed.
Yeah.
The way the core mechanic works is that you have skill sets, which range generally between 1 and 6.
Yeah.
And then you pick the skill set you're going to test against, and you pick the attribute that best fits the circumstance, and you add them together, and that's your target number. And you're going to roll equal to or less than that. So if you're at a -3 for a particular attribute, and you pair that with a skill set that is a 2, now you're going to be at a -1, and you just functionally aren't going to be able to succeed at that thing.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that if you're modifying your attributes, that you're doing that in conjunction with what you want your character to be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like physique is like around the fitness, like size, musculature,
fitness, strength,
toughness,
size,
all that sort of stuff.
Yep. It embodies all those physical traits, musculature, general health. There's the compromise you make with having only 4 attributes that you really have to kind of crowd some things in.
Yeah.
And that's a big change from the previous edition, but it's one we're willing to make just because it's more accessible.
Yeah.
And the focus attributes really allow that too, right? So you can bump them back up. Say that you pick physique, right? To have your sort of lower stat in, but maybe you work out all the time. So you could pick like fit, and you'll get a +1 to whatever your score for physique is.
I like that. I can't wait to get to that that additional attribute thing, the focus attributes, because that's really interesting.
It's a fun part of creating the character because they really start to take on a personality at that point.
All right. So I think I've got my attributes locked in for this part.
I do as well.
I think I'm going to leave mine like where they were.
Okay.
Where they were at.
Yeah, you had quite a decent range there with the species that you selected.
I mean, kind of. Not really. Like a +3, a -2, a -1.
That's true.
Those are big for this game. A +3 is huge. Yeah. And we have this thing called the rules contain lots of specific modifiers for different things in the game, and we suggest that people feel free to give bonuses or penalties to given tests based on circumstances. But the way we suggest doing that is we call the rule of 2. If there's a positive, if there's an advantage that the characters have, give them a +2. If there's a disadvantage, give them a -2. And then for every advantage, they get another +2. So if they're elevated and it's nighttime and the target's in short range, that's +6. But if it's too far away, or they've got the target is moving, or it's going to be the equivalent of -6. And you just add all those pluses and minuses together until you come up with your number. In the wash, it comes out pretty much as the same as if you actually followed each individual rule for those particular things. So you can imagine if your character always starts with a -3 in something or a +3 in something, and our rule of 2 says a major advantage gives you a +2, it's pretty significant range to have a +3.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
All right. So the next thing is our focus attributes.
Ooh.
There are, I wouldn't call them exhaustive lists, but I have spent a lot of time trying to think of additional ones, and it kind of stalled out. Mm-hmm. I could only go to thesaurus.com so many times and find something different. But you are welcome to put in your own, of course. And these basically are just adjectives, single word adjectives that describe generally positive characteristics. I did experiment for a while with a requirement that there be a negative one. So maybe things like selfish, crabby, picky, mean, grumpy, right? And that every character would have to have one of those as well, because it felt like real people. Mm-hmm. But in play, when you're picking the attribute to go along with your skill, I just didn't see most people, or a lot of people, picking grumpy and taking the negative intentionally. Mm-hmm. It just didn't feel like it was going to be used enough to make it worth a whole mechanic around. I'm still torn about it, and I may add it as an optional rule, but I think it would be cool if one of your 8 focus attributes had to be a negative one, because everybody has negative personality traits.
So if I have a -2 in an attribute, how do I pick focus attributes for that?
So pick whatever one you want to have. So if we're talking about your cognition and you want to be aware or calculating, you just pick that and you write it into the space underneath cognition, and whatever your score is for cognition is a +1 for that. So if your cognition is a 2, then your aware is a 3. Mm-hmm. And during character advancement, it's cheaper to raise a focus attribute than it is to raise a base attribute.
Gotcha.
So you can really lean into being aware if you want to, for less advancement currency than if you were trying to raise your whole cognition attribute. Because mechanically, it just has a bigger effect. One of the things I really am appreciating about our conversation today is that I feel I'm getting to articulate thoughts that were just sort of more nebulous in my head about the character creation and the mechanics in general. And I like that they feel like they're coming out coherently and are justifiable in terms of design intent.
And now they're recorded, so you don't even have to write it all down.
Ooh, there you go.
For cognition, I'm going to go with insightful and humorous.
Nice.
For those. Ooh, artistic.
I love that for physique, one of them is durable. It just is like that.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'm going with sort of the grunt/hitter trope for our private investigation firm. So I'm going to go with clever and observant, though cognition is definitely not my strong suit. So I get clever 0 and observant 0, which, someone looking at a character sheet and seeing 0 next to them goes, oh, wow, that sucks. But mechanically, it's just average.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I went with observant and logical. I feel like matched my attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. For psyche, I went with artistic and friendly. So I've got a 3 in those as well.
Yeah, I went with determined and intense. So that'll put me at a -1.
I took deceptive and cool-headed. Now, one suggestion I always make is to try and diversify your focus attributes, right? Because some of these are pretty similar, like logical and genius, or intellectual and genius. Maybe you could apply those in just about the same circumstances. So it's to your advantage in terms of, it's a kind of min-maxing, I suppose, but you get more bang for your buck if you spread them out. So humorous and genius is probably more useful than intellectual and genius.
Mm-hmm. So I went with acrobatic, I think, for my first coordination. Arguably includes a lot of these other items on this list.
Yeah, it does. That coordination is probably the least diversified.
Yeah.
I feel like graceful could be good for you.
Graceful? Yeah, I like that.
All right, because the singing, you gotta have a little bit of dance that goes along with that.
Yeah.
And you already got a +2 for appearing graceful.
Oh, yeah.
Social maneuvers, so you're gonna be super graceful.
So it'd be +4 at that, or 4 at that point. Oh, goodness. Yeah, so acrobatic and graceful for coordination.
I went with fast and sure-footed.
Ooh.
Which puts them at 0.
I took athletic and handy.
Nice. Like a real MacGyver over there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about my physique, which is unassuming and healthy.
Yeah, I like some of the physique ones. They seem to be the most diverse, in comparison to coordination. But I took durable and petite. I wanted to play against type for the bruiser, not necessarily because I'm big, but maybe because I'm mean or something.
You should put, one of them can be what I used to refer to my daughter as dense. She was just like dense. Well, she's not like a big baby. She's just like dense.
The other thing to maybe press here is that these are just suggestions. If there are other ones, like I actually thought it was on here. I was looking for wiry and realized it's not on here. And I thought, well, I could just be wiry, but I saw petite and that felt right. But yeah, you can certainly make up any that you want. And I suggest just a single word. There's no reason people couldn't use, a phrase if they really wanted to, but we're trying to keep it accessible. So
yes.
All right. I'm going to go with beautiful and fit for physique.
Ooh.
Nice.
So -2 for both of those.
Oh. It's a good thing you're transhuman.
I know, right?
Right. So you're graceful in your coordination, but really not very fit.
Yeah, when your parents moved the sliders when they had you designed, they kind of must have said, "Here's the dump stat. We'll just slide this one to the left."
Well, I want to think that this character is still like beautiful and fit, but like every other aspect of physique is like just bringing the average down.
Sure.
Gotcha.
But you're still mechanically, at the minus for those things.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Right. But less minus.
Minus.
Maybe it's less about the actual physical beauty. It's maybe when you like your personality starts to come out or something.
Yeah.
So I should point out, we decided by default, because none of us are aquaforms, that we're obviously not natives, that we must be newcomers to the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Just as, a point of sort of session 0 decision making. That we have all been here for as part of the new wave of the colony effort.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, it's possible that if we're young enough that we were born here, it's only been 34 years since Recontact. So we'd have to be in our teens to realistically be the offspring of any newcomers.
That makes sense. I was picturing 20s for my character, probably.
So I suddenly just had like a Hardy Boys moment. Maybe we're actually in our teens and we're all just kids who are trying to do all these things.
That could work too. But that'd be an interesting private investigation firm.
Right. A very different sort of private investigation.
Yeah, it's called Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Oh.
Hardy Boys.
Are we the Scooby-Doo of Poseidon?
No, because we're not hunting ghosts.
And we don't have a talking dog?
Yet. Jeff, can you make us a dog species, please?
There is one someplace in it wasn't statted out, but it was mentioned.
Okay.
And I'm trying to remember what we called it.
So that's our GM NPC is the dog.
A dog that can kind of talk.
I just want to be clear that I'm definitely the Velma of this situation.
I'm definitely Shaggy, but as if Shaggy had taken lessons from like a martial arts dojo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can just mix a bunch of things and you can be like one of the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. That's a different biomod, though.
Oh, darn it.
Actually, that's one of the stretch goals is we'll call it the herptile. The skink is what it's called at in production right now, is instead of being based on gorilla or cat or just this amalgam, it's based on reptile DNA, so that you're more durable and you have enhanced healing properties.
Ooh.
The equivalent of growing back a new tail kind of thing.
Oh, that's nice.
All right. So it sounds like we're done with our focus.
Yeah.
Well, and just to reiterate, of course, you're welcome to make your own foci if you choose to. And it is somewhat optional. I mean, you don't have to create focus attributes if you don't want to. You can always just play with the 4 base ones. But as you can see, just reading down the list, your character has come to life now, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just what they look like so far, but what they're actually like.
Yeah, like now we know that my character eats a lot of salads.
Yep.
Well, I'm already thinking like in my goal is to have acceptance, but under psyche, one of my advantages is deceptive. So I'm thinking, how do you, it's interesting to think about reconciling those in play, right?
You lie to get people to like you.
Oh, that's so close to real life.
Look, it's what we all do. It's called Twitter and Facebook.
All right. So the next thing is strain. And this is really just a mechanical thing that's determined by your attributes.
Okay.
So we'll figure out what the numbers are first, and I'll tell you how it works. Whatever your psyche score is determines your mental strain. So if it is 0 or less, you get 1 point of mental strain. If it's 1 to 2, you get 2 points. 3 to 4, you get 3 points, and so forth. So whatever your psyche is, I'm at a -1, so I get 1 mental strain. And that goes into the circle to the left of the word mental, under strain. And then physical is similar. Whatever your physical, your physique is your physical strain determinant. I have a 2, and that gives me 2 points. But because I have the survivor biomod, this is the genie mod, I get a +1 to that as just a little bonus. So I have 3 physical strain.
Nice.
So what is your psyche, Ryan?
So my psyche is 2.
So you get 2 points.
So I get 2 points of
mental strain.
And we all know what my physique is, -3.
So you get a 1.
So I get a 1.
You get at least 1 point, no matter what.
So I'm fine with that.
Yeah, mine are both negative numbers, so I get 1 for
1 point each. And that is used as sort of it's a player facing odds adjustment mechanic, right? So that you feel a little bit empowered to have some control over your dice. You can use it in 2 ways. The probably the most economic way to use it is 1 for 1 to increase your target number. So I'm really going to try hard to figure this out. I'm going to add 1 of my mental strain, so I get a +1 on my die.
Okay.
Same thing with physical. I'm going to really exert myself to lift this weight. You add 1, get a +1 on your die. Alternatively, if you fail a test, you can spend a point and re-roll. But the thing that makes that less efficient is it's still a die roll. But also, if you fail, you are now -1 for the attribute you were using until you've had a good night's sleep, a meal, some medical care, whatever it is that in the fiction caused the strain. So it was just a conscious decision to give players a player-facing way to adjust the odds, but also to give some narrative consequence to getting a second bite at the action.
Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Skill sets. And here is the other place where your characters will start to really take shape in terms of who they are. So we're at power level every day. So you get 5 skill sets. Exceptional characters get 6 skill sets. Elite characters get 7 skill sets. And this is for starting play. As you advance your character, you can always add more skill sets because you can learn more stuff in the story.
Okay.
You start with 15 ranks that you can distribute. And then exceptional gets 18, elite gets 21. What that basically amounts to is you get an average of 3 points per skill set. So my advice is to just write 3s down in the first 5 and you can adjust as you go. But just to keep track as you're making the character, it's easy to do that.
Okay.
Or you can just leave them blank and just know that you can distribute 15 points once you've come up with all your skill sets.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Personal preference. The other thing to notice is that on the character sheet, underneath where you will write the general for each of your skill sets is a term. And the first one is origin. The second one is background, occupation, experiential, and then developmental. And those are meant to sort of guide your character development in your head as you're making your character. So you can put anything you want, but if you're kind of following the intention of character creation, the first one is origin. What skill set comes from where you were born and raised, right? I think the text says skill sets related to where a character was born or created and the nature of their childhood, right? So you could think generally, I was a rural kid, so you could write like farm boy, or, you could just write rural upbringing as your first general skill set. Or you could be very specific, like boarding school, right? And that's sort of your formative experience. And that's really what the first one should be, is your formative experience as a kid. That's the skill set that we're covering. And as you begin to write them, you're going to find that you're going to write something in general, and then it's going to lead to writing something next to it under core, and then something specialty. And then you go, oh, wait a minute, this is the specialty I really want. So now I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to erase and I'm going to rewrite. So you're going to find yourself kind of like trading back and forth with the goal of going from some general descriptor of what you know from that experience to the specialty descriptor of what you know from that experience. And whatever way you are most comfortable doing that or most inspired doing that, feel free to. I find myself writing something in and then going in either direction and then kind of erasing and rewriting until I get a set of 3 that specifies that increasing detail from left to right.
So the 15 skill set rank is like 3.
Those are the numbers. Those are the points. No, those are the points that you get to spend on your skill sets once you've established them.
Okay.
So they go in the big circles to the left.
Gotcha.
You'll have 3s or whatever. And they'll range from 1 to 6 at character creation. Gotcha. You can't have anything higher than a 6 when you're first making your character. But then you'll move to the background skill set and then your occupation skill set. And the background is, so I was like in my personal life, I was born in Minnesota, but I was 5 years old when we moved away. It was pretty formative and it was very rural. So that could be my origin, right? I learned to camp and I learned to shoot a gun and I learned to make a fire because those are things that I remember from childhood. But then I moved to Boston and for high school, and that was a big change and very formative in its own. So that would be my background, right? And then I trained as a ecologist, so maybe that was my occupation, and that's the next skill set. And then experiential, well, since being a scientist, I then became a science teacher. And so now I have a skill set around being a science teacher. And I also started designing games. So my developmental one is now I'm a game designer. So those are my skill sets for those sort of life path selections. And so that's the intention behind how it's structured when you're making your character. You pick those things from your character's life. And when you're done, you look back and say, oh, this is the path my character followed to get where they are today and know the things that they know. And I really like that because not only does it obviously obviate all of the nonsense with 100 different skills, but it also makes me feel like my character is a real person who had a life.
Where is this like PI firm located? Like where, because I assume that like if it's a family owned business, Ryan, are we part of this family?
That's a good question. It could be.
I assumed I was.
Yeah, it could be a couple families or a few families that kind of teamed up together.
True. To
start this. I was kind of picturing my character maybe coming over to Poseidon with their family from like the age of 5 or so.
Okay.
So like coming from Earth at a young age and then growing up here where my character's parents started this PI business with whomever else. And then kind of grew into that. But we could be siblings. We could be just family friends. We could be cousins even. All sorts of options here. Do we want to do just like full blood ties and go like siblings or cousins?
Sure.
I'd like to opt out of the blood tie because I have kind of a concept I'm working off of.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah. No, it sounded like that from before, too.
I'm actually from Mars. So, born and raised on Mars.
Nice.
So how do you want to share these? Do we want to fill them all in first and then talk about them, or do we want to talk about them as we go?
I think I want to fill all of mine in first, if that's okay.
Mix and match. So, like, I guess for one example of what I'm working with to make sure I'm doing it kind of right? For developmental, for the general, I put entertainer. And then for core, I went with musician.
Okay.
And then for specialty, I went with singer-songwriter.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Now, again, this is an area where, I mean, you did great with that. This is an area when you're making your skill sets that you also want to consider keeping them pretty broad. So you wouldn't want a second skill set that was related to performing.
Correct.
Because there'd just be too much overlap and you'd kind of be wasting opportunities for other things.
I can imagine our occupations could easily overlap with this private investigation stuff. Mm-hmm. But then the core and specialty is an easy place to differentiate.
Yes.
I'm trying to think of I can't think of words that I want.
So did we decide where we want to actually be based on the planet? Are we in a big city, or are we out in the middle of nowhere? There was some talk about that.
I like out in the middle of nowhere personally.
Okay, so we would be traveling a lot because the population, there's only 2 million people on the planet and they're scattered all over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I like having that traveling element and
perfect.
Not being in a hub of activity. That way people come to us and we know it's significant if they walk through our doors. There I was sitting behind my desk and then they walked in.
Yeah, I would imagine that most of our business doesn't walk through our doors. That would be really telling.
Exactly. Getting a very noir feel in a way. So yeah, like you said, I've got a interesting, if I came here at age 5, I could have my origin stuff be from Earth. It's kind of that borderline age, right?
Right.
Where a lot of,
like I said, this is not, there's no hard and fast mechanical reason why you can't double down on your background and not really worry about your origin.
Yeah, exactly.
It really just depends on how you want to frame your character. I think a lot of people, I realize there are formative things about our personalities that are always part of being 5 years old. But, some people who lived in the same town their whole lives, it might be less influential than someone who moved to some dramatically different environment, like a new country or something when they were a little kid.
Okay. I think I have it was very messy. I was trying to keep it nice and clean so that I can just easily send it to you or put it in the drive. But because of the carpal tunnel and not being able to hold a pen, I'm
oh, yeah.
So one of the things that I maybe should mention is that despite the sort of default expectation that people do the origin, background, occupation sort of skill set, we do have a sidebar suggesting other ways to organize it. So the idea is that oftentimes people forget a whole area that is commonly used in role-playing games and they find their character to not have anything. I don't have any social skills. Crap.
Oh, no.
Which is fine. You can retcon it. You can change something, whatever. But you could also organize them by sort of areas of expertise. So social, technical, general knowledge, physical or combat, which are the kinds of things that are often coming up in role-playing games. So if you prefer, you can just make sure you have skill sets that fall into each of those categories, and then you've got your basic 5.
I didn't make any social skills.
Which might actually be perfect for that character. Because there is a default mechanic.
That's true. And they're all pretty cognition heavy. So maybe I'll just stop going to therapy and then I'll be really, really good at them.
Mm-hmm.
And now you would just so once you've made your list, you want to add your ranks in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So however many points you want to spend on each of them. If it's important to you, give it more points. If you think it's less important to the character, give it fewer points. But in the end, you have at least 1, and you can't have more than 6 as you're starting out with your character.
Oh, this part makes me do math, and I don't. Forget everything nice I said about this game. This has math.
Easiest thing is just put in 3s for all of them.
Yep.
And if you want to adjust anything, just take away 1 and add it somewhere else, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
I am struggling with experiential. So I did private investigator for occupation for the general. I got to figure out what sort of core and specialty that branches into.
Research might be part of it, right? Especially in a world where you've got all the digital resources. Maybe electronic surveillance. Maybe, and remember that they don't have to be like a perfectly logical line.
Yeah.
For example, like I have my experiential one is friendly deception disguise. Right.
Okay.
So you wouldn't necessarily draw a straight line from friendly to disguise, but in terms of like, I'm a friendly guy who can talk you up and start a conversation.
That makes sense.
It's logical to assume that down the road, I could use that same ability to lie, but disguise is really just a fancy, specific kind of lying. Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a perfectly logical straight line from private investigator to whatever the next categories are, just recognizing that your character links those together in how they became what they are and how you approach challenges.
Okay.
I mean, I started with logic and got to puzzles and riddles. So
there you go.
Yeah, that's a good line.
So I've got private investigator for the general, and I think tactician for the specialty.
Excellent.
Gosh, what would be the middle of that? Like,
I mean, you could even, and the other thing is you can also be, I don't want to say general, but tactician could also be like tricks of the trade, which we would then have linked to PI. So we know it's not tricks of any trade, it's tricks of the PI trade. Right. So, because a lot of it is real-time interpretation of what these mean as you play.
Yeah.
And a lot of emergent effects. Like I had a kid the other day took shooter as their skill, and they thought that it would be, back up. The character they were playing it was a pre-gen character, had straight shooter. But the line it was part of was, I think they were a stand-up guy, and then second one was straight shooter or whatever. And in the middle of combat, like it says straight shooter on my character sheet. Can I use that? And I realized that they didn't understand what it meant as a phrase. So I said, sure, because they wanted to shoot straight with their gun. Right.
Oh.
So, there is real-time interpretation that happens with a system like this that is both fun and emergent. So I'm done with my skill sets, though I feel like if I was going to play this character in a campaign, there'd be some tweaking that goes on as the first session or two went by.
I almost want to go move my tactician to core and put specialty as real-time strategy games. I'm going to do that. Add a little bit of gamer flavor to my character, which goes along with my mastermind concept, I guess. Oh boy. Okay. Experiential. I went charismatic, stage magic, and then misdirection.
Ooh.
Nice.
Figured that could be interesting. Cool. I got all mine.
The same advice that I suggest for making sure that the different skill sets don't overlap is, and probably the harder thing is to make sure that the different levels within a skill set, the general, core, and specialty, are distinct enough to make them worth having in your descriptors. And that proves to be kind of the tougher thing for me to do than separating the skill sets. Yeah, I'm ready to roll whenever you guys are.
All right.
I've even put in my numbers already, but I have the distinct advantage of having designed the system, so it goes a little faster.
I got my numbers in there too.
Yeah, I've got mine in there as well. Cool.
Are you over there min-maxing your character, Ryan?
Just a little bit. Not too much. I'm trying to go based on like background and stuff like that, and according to what my character might actually be, which is interesting. Okay, yeah, I'm all set.
Okay. So for origin, okay, see, now I wrote over the little watermarks in here. I put transition, adaptation, and then integration.
Ooh.
Yeah. Do you want me to do all of mine, or do we all want to go do origin?
I like going one line at a time for each of us.
Okay.
For my origin, I went with Earth culture, small town living, survival gardening.
Ooh.
Oh, nice. Very cool. I think that does a great job of illuminating sort of one of the strengths of doing it this way. Brian, yours was very practical, right? Much like mine. Mine's very like practical. But Amelia, yours was much more sort of like next level character descriptor, right? Those weren't specific things that they do, but they're ways that they might engage with the world. Makes it harder to interpret, but does give you a lot more like range for what you want your character to be. And that's just up to the choice of the individual player. So
yeah.
I have Mars as my general. Mars, born and raised. Rural survival as my core, and scrounging as my specialty.
Oh, fun.
I imagine I was a part of a little terraforming settlement, and life was hard on the red frontier.
All right. What do you got for your background, Amelia?
I put reading, and then I put comprehension, and then I put writing.
Interesting. I went with, I actually took one of the cues from the examples. I thought it fit very well for my character. I went teenager, social media, and friends everywhere.
Oh,
nice. So are you actually a teenager?
No, I think just having the experience of having been a teenager fairly recently,
nice.
Moving into my 20s.
I took mechanic, electronics technician, and terraforming equipment specialist.
Ooh, fancy.
Which I don't see that coming up a lot in a direct sense, but I imagine it could be played with in other ways.
Yeah.
You never know. What is the next one here?
Yeah, that was my background.
So. The occupation is next, I believe.
There you go. Okay. I can't read it anymore. For occupation, I put observation, interrogation, and undercover work.
Ooh. I like that. For me, I went with private investigator, tactician, and real-time strategy games.
My occupation is security. For my general, core is intrusion, and specialty is bodyguard.
Nice. Then we got experiential next.
This is where I put logic, games, and then puzzles and riddles.
Very cool. And I went with charismatic, stage magic, and then misdirection.
For my experiential, I picked colonial culture, specifically like Poseidon colonial culture, Haven, which is the capital city, the biggest settlement. So I spent time there, apparently. And then rural villages, because we've been living in the sticks for a while, apparently. And I'm starting to get a sense of what that life is like.
Very cool. And then developmental is the last one.
I put research, and then information gathering, and then I wrote auditing.
Oh.
We have to know you can gather all the information, but you got to be able to parse through it.
Right.
Yeah. And my strongest skill, I put a 4 in this one. Entertainer for the general, and then musician for the core, and singer-songwriter for the specialty.
I picked for my developmental, I think I mentioned this before, I'm friendly. I am increasing my ability to deceive and practicing my disguise.
Wonderful.
I feel like that is something I've started to do in association with you guys, having to put on a hard hat and carry a clipboard and pretend like I'm supposed to be somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I took a point, I had 3s across the board, and I took a point from my origin for the Earth culture and whatnot, since I was pretty young when I came from Earth. And I took that point and put it into my developmental, to raise that to 4. So 2 for Earth culture and 4 for entertainer.
Yeah. My lowest one is my colonial culture, because I'm assuming I haven't been here that long.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took 2 from my origin and put it in my developmental. So
nice.
I'm not necessarily actually great at adaptation and integration, so much as I am great at auditing.
You're the bookkeeper for the business, probably. Get those futuristic Excel spreadsheets going.
All right. So
Look, you have to follow the money. That's
true.
That's where it is.
the heavy lifting and the most of the numerical stuff is done.
Oh, wonderful.
Good.
So all that's left are some of the fun role play bits.
All right.
The next step would be, and we do provide a lot of advice around building these skill sets so that people can have some guidance. And then also about the collaborative nature of it. You don't all want to be making the same character, of course, unless that's the intent of your the story you want to tell. But so the next thing would be tags. And for starting characters, you don't necessarily need any. We recommend there be one or two just to further flesh out your character. So you'll notice there's a box on the first page of the character sheet where you would just identify the tag with some descriptor, and then it doesn't have to have any kind of mechanical effect. It can just be a role-playing cue or just a descriptive cue. But you can also give it a mechanical effect if you want to. I think the example I used previously was bum knee, right? That says a lot about your character, because in a world where you've got such precise and effective medical care and genetic engineering, there's no reason for someone with any resources at all to continue to have a bum knee. But if you do, then it means that you either doing it by choice or you don't have an option. So it does tell a lot about your character. I'm going to just take a single tag for my character to start with. I'm going to say wild look, which means when using a social maneuver to intimidate, I get a +1. Just because I'm a little wild eyes. I'm playing off the fact that I have a physique focus called petite at 3, which kind of implies I'm really small. And so I figure if I'm going to be intimidating at all, it has to be something more social than physical.
I just picked one that was like, that seems correct. So I wrote, comes prepared. And then the features always has office supplies.
Post-it notes and pens everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Some little sticky tabs.
If I were running this campaign, when we talk about the next thing, traits, I would suggest that we come up with a shared trait for the campaign itself. It might be about the business specifically, or it could be about sort of what we decide the campaign's going to be about.
Yeah.
And then if you want to, as an individual character, you can add in any number of other tracks for elements of the character that you want to follow.
Okay.
Or the moderator may say, this game is going to involve a lot of sort of scary existential things. So we're going to have a bravery track or a fear track or whatever. And then you come up with the categories that go with that. We provide guidance on how to build those.
Okay. For my tag, I'm going to put trendy, +1 to social maneuvers involving youth. So if socializing with the youth of the world, I kind of know the latest trends.
Get the likes.
So I can kind of speak their language, and I know what on fleek means and stuff like that.
That was so 2020.
I have no idea what on fleek means, but my character
referred to something as totally dope the other day, and now my kids won't stop saying it.
Yeah.
Like they think that this is the funniest thing that they've ever heard.
Goes around, comes around.
Yep.
And so now the other day, Nate was like, we're playing Pokemon and we caught this really cool one. You know what it was, Mom? And I was like, what? And he goes, dope. I was like, Thanks. I get it. I'm old.
That's not an official Pokemon. I'm sorry.
I don't think it is.
Oh. All right. I think I'll just go with the one trait or a tag. Keep it simple.
And it could be that the moderator wants to impose tags. I'm sorry for jumping ahead to tracks. I wasn't paying attention. But
no, it's fine.
With tags, you could have a moderator impose one to start the game too. Like maybe you're wanted. That's one that comes to mind. Like the whole party is wanted, and you want to make that part of the character description. But like anything like that, right? Yeah. Or maybe you're all wealthy, or maybe you're all poor, or whatever.
I did add one more. I wrote fiscal responsibility because my goal is to save the family business. I'm very serious about not misusing the office supplies that I have, and let's not spend too much money.
It's really just a place to codify what you're talking about in your session 0 about your characters.
Yeah. Okay.
Now we can talk about tracks.
Yes.
So just to sort of push the example, what kind of track would you imagine would be worth pacing for this campaign?
Well, if we want to save the family business, that means we're probably struggling.
So we could just call it family business.
Yeah.
And then noting that it still has to be personal. It's not a track to save the business. It's a track that describes your connection to that effort. Because I think the way it's realized in the mechanics wouldn't necessarily allow us to tie in whether the business is being saved or not directly, because that's the story, right?
Right.
When the campaign's over, did we save the business? As opposed to from day to day, how do we feel about the effort to save the business?
Mm-hmm. And what are you personally doing for that? So does that go like on the top, the trait?
Yeah, where it says trait, what do we call it? Saving the family business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'd be willing to bet my role is like social media manager and
branding.
And branding.
So on a day-to-day basis, how do we feel about the business? Is our average like, are we frustrated, or are we excited, or is it just more neutral than that? So the idea is that you have a neutral position, your sort of set everyday position.
Yeah.
Employed. That's my neutral position.
Okay, that sounds awesome.
I like that.
And then I guess the next one down then might be furloughed.
Mm-hmm.
Hitting a little too close to home.
Right. And then laid off.
And the lowest one would be fired. Fired feels, for me, I think fired
it's
feels.
more evocative.
Yeah. So what's the next one up from employed?
I think it's like employed, employee of the month, promotion.
Can we make the top one corner office?
Yes.
Since we don't have one anyway, I'm imagining, since we're just in a little rural prefab colonial shelter.
Mm-hmm. You get to put your stuff in the top drawer of the desk.
The easiest drawer to reach.
Okay, so employee, and then what was the middle one?
Employed was the middle one?
Yep.
Yeah, employed is the middle, and then
employee of the month was the next one up. Employee of the month,
that's right.
And then corner office was the top one. And so in play, as a moderator, I might be like, you guys, and this isn't something that's constantly changing throughout a session, but it might change once in a session. It might not. It might change a couple of times, but I would imagine let's say we've gotten to the end of the adventure and for the episode of the week, and you've just completed the job, and the people that hire you stiff you for your pay. I might make you, if I'm the moderator, I might ask you all to make psyche tests against essentially your willpower to keep going. And if you fail, then I tell you, okay, I'm going to bump you down one level on the Save the Family Business track.
Okay.
So you were just holding on at employed. Now you're feeling furloughed, right? I mean, you're not technically furloughed, but that's what you're feeling like, oh,
and
so that's common.
Yeah.
So what that means is in any circumstance where that's a negative, feeling furloughed, it's going to be a penalty to your test, a -1. If for some reason, and I can imagine a few where that situation would give you an advantage, like if you were trying to maybe betray the family or something, right? It would give you a bonus.
Okay.
So that there's a mechanical hook to the role-playing hook of being that person. So
then are we gonna want to create a more personal track as well?
You can if you want to, yeah. And you can we suggest making 1 or 2 for the party, like this one, and then 1 or 2 for your individual character, something that's important to you in expressing the character concept, ideally, or just something that you think would be fun enhancement to your personal role playing.
Okay, very cool.
And the modifiers for the tracks don't apply to every role you make. They kind of really only apply to the significant tests of that specific thing.
Right.
Like, given my character concept, yeah. I'll stop talking now.
So I was thinking of a personal track for my character. Like a superstar.
Nice.
Like a superstar track. I want one of the negative ones, probably the first negative one. to be imposter syndrome.
Oh, nice. Actually, the sad thing is, I would imagine for many of us, that's the average.
Right.
Right.
I mean, who am I to be designing a game, right? Like, you'll probably realize, I think I mentioned this, that the areas where you need to write more are the areas that we made way too cramped on this character sheet. So those are being redesigned. So there'll be more space to write stuff out, particularly in the ties. But for now, it is what it is.
You know what? I think I am going to move imposter syndrome to the base level. And then put, all right. So I've got imposter syndrome for the base, and then writer's block for the first one down, and then burned out for the lowest. And one above imposter syndrome, I'm going with inspired. And then for the top tier, found my muse.
Ooh, good.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think the advantage of this one is they don't have to be quite as carefully labeled because they have distinct levels. You don't have to make them mutually exclusive descriptors like you do with skill sets.
Yeah.
So for mine, my track is titled Belonging, since that was sort of my shtick as I was thinking about the character concept. And I start at outsider, and as I go down, I would be loner and then finally lost. But as I go up, I get a circle of friends and finally a family.
Very cool.
I haven't really thought of mine yet, but we can move on. I'm toying with it.
Okay. So we could move on to ties while you're working on that one.
Okay. So ties are really what they sound like, ties to organizations or people. And they are to help your character not just be this isolated entity in the setting, but to ground them in realistic role-playing opportunities and with connecting them to the world around them like we are connected to the world around us. Basically, the comical way to describe it would be to sort of prevent you from being murder hobos, right? Because you have a place in a society in which you are actually living.
Right.
And they can be as elaborate or as many as you want. Again, we suggest a couple. It's always great to have connections to the other characters. So it might be fun if we each had a connection, a tie to each other. It would be logical that we each had a tie to the company, though it does a nice parallel to the track we created for the company, but it's not necessarily necessary. And of course, you can have your own private one if any of us have a spouse or a polycule or kids or just a community organization that we're part of, or a second job or what have you, or a dark past and you've got, somebody who's blackmailing you or hunting you or whatever. That could be a tie as well. Well, it doesn't have to be a positive thing. In fact, for a role-playing game, it's probably sometimes better to have something that's not positive because it gives good hooks for everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
What is the name of our PI firm?
It's got to be maybe based off of our character's last name. Like if our family is the one that founded this PI firm.
Right.
That we'd have to come up with names before we can think of that, though.
I know. I have a first name, but I don't know. I'm so bad at last names.
Oh, okay. Well, what's your first name? And are we siblings?
We said siblings or cousins. So
Yeah.
We could have the same last name if we want.
That's true either way. Yeah.
My first name is Maris.
Maris. Okay.
It means of the sea.
Ooh. What origin is that?
It's English.
Oh, okay.
Or I think Latin, maybe, technically, before it was English. I know mar is sea or ocean in Spanish.
How do you spell that?
Maris.
Latin origin, yeah.
Oh, technically we came from Earth, didn't we? So,
yeah.
It could be any kind of regular, I say regular last name as if last names have any sense to them at all. Mine is, in fact, the name of a place. I think it should just be Pacific.
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 That's what you want the last name to be?
Sure, why not?
Okay.
It could be Atlantic if you want.
I'm going to go with Saren for my character's first name. It's a Welsh origin meaning star.
Ooh.
I didn't want to go with the Latin word for star. Although Estelle, Estella, they sound very, very old fashioned.
I think you did something like, didn't you do something kind of like that for another recent game?
That's very possible. Titania, or Titania, well, would be kind of cool too. That's the largest of Uranus's moons. Queen of the Fairies.
Earth.
In Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Tatiana.
Well, it's Titani. Is it pronounced Tatiana?
I don't know. I assume that's it.
Oh. Yeah, I'll go Seren. Pacific?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I like that because the largest cluster of islands is called the Pacifica Archipelago. And there's going to be constant like confusion between Pacific and Pacifica. And no. It's Pacific. It's we
did all the branding before we got there.
Right.
Like, oh, we already printed the business cards. It's too late. This is why we're not doing well.
Yeah. Everybody goes to the Pacific Archipelago to find our place, and we're not there.
It's all autofill when you do your search, right? So everything comes up Pacifica, and so you never get any hits.
Oh, super bad SEO. Oh, that sucks.
We're in talks to change it, though. We're like, what if we just added an A on the sign, though?
What is our last name?
Right? It's like our parents absolutely won't, and we're like, but we really need you to.
Our whole thing is to take down everything that can interfere with the Pacific SEO.
Right. Yeah. So if we want our tie to be to this PI firm, it's like what Pacific Investigative Services or something. Is that go under name?
I just like Pacific Investigators. PI. Yeah. Which sounds fun.
Yes.
I bet we get a lot of like, did you say specific investigators? What? What's that?
Pacific.
Pacific.
Yeah.
Pacific.
Specifically Pacific Investigators, the PI firm.
Okay. So my connection then, I guess all of us would be employees, but you'd also be the boss. So I'm just employee. You'd be owner operators, I guess.
Well, we are, I think, I would say like set to inherit eventually. I don't think that we're in charge yet.
Oh, yeah. I thought you guys were in charge.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think our parents are still around and still calling the shots.
Well, yeah, I think maybe they're like tied to your parents, managing then. Like, they're like emeritus, like,
Oh, that's great because I work for your parents. I don't work for you.
Yeah.
Right.
and I say that all the time. As friendly as possible. Because I'm like, well, but your mom said, oh, that's got to be awful when I say, but your mom said.
Business decisions.
And I guess I very quickly learned that that's not what I should say. Mrs. Pacific said.
Pacific.
But then actually we have two moms, so they're both Mrs. Pacific, and that didn't clear anything up at all.
So Mama and Mom, Mama right. Pacific said? Mama?
Mrs. is Pacific.
Ms. and yeah, I don't know.
So obligation is like how we connect to, like how we feel about them.
The obligation is what you have to do to maintain that tie in whatever way you want to maintain it. So
gotcha.
In this case, the name is Pacific Investigations. My connection is employee, and my obligation is I got to do what you guys tell me if I want to get paid or I lose my job. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty straightforward. If we go to kind of the opposite extreme, let's say I decided that I am an escapee from a genetics laboratory, and that my connection to them is the escapee part. The obligation is to keep running and keep from like coming up on the radar so that they can recapture me.
Continue being escaped.
Right. So the idea is that if I don't do those things, then the game master can complicate my life by having me found and now I have to go underground again.
Gotcha.
So the idea is that you want to put a little bit of mechanical, even though it's not like a specific rule, you want to put some sort of like teeth in it so that your character lives up to that obligation and doesn't just forget about the fact they have kids.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was kids, you might say, well, I have financial obligation. It's amazing how many ex-spouses there are in my playtest groups. And it's all about like making that alimony or whatever, right?
Okay.
That's really funny.
So yeah, we're set to kind of inherit this together when our parents retire effectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that we are siblings because I want two moms too.
Okay.
And
don't we all?
It would be interesting if we're around the same age too, that each of our moms carried us at the same time.
How about 3 moms?
Oh, that's adorable. I really like that.
Why not 3 moms? This is Poseidon. This is $21.99.
True. You can have all the moms.
We have all the moms.
And it's genetically genetic engineering, so you could actually be the biological offspring of all 3 moms.
Oh, that blows my mind.
That's amazing.
Especially because you were both genetically modified prenatally.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Do we have to name these moms? Because if we have to name them, it's no more than 2.
Please tell me that they're named after other oceans, like Indian, Atlantic, and Arctic or something.
Yes.
Pacific.
That'd be some super hippie stuff. I'm not sure that kind of hippie would become private investigators, but the kind of private investigators you've been describing, maybe so.
Yeah.
We're going to bring down the man. All right. Now I really want to play this campaign.
So
I need another.
Pacific Investigations, Inheritance, and keep the business afloat. Be the obligation, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got 3 moms.
Yeah. So I'm gonna put under name. I'm gonna put moms.
Mm-hmm. That's probably a good one.
Connection. They're my moms. No.
Offspring. Genetic result.
Right. And then obligation. Can I just put yes? Because I think that's how moms work.
So I'm identifying you two as a connection together as the siblings.
Okay. Yeah.
And my connection to you is coworker, because that's the problem. Like, I'm actually employed by your moms, not by you.
Mm-hmm.
And my obligation is to keep you satisfied while actually doing what your parents tell me to.
Ryan, what is your character's name?
Seren, Seren.
Okay.
I'm Zebulon Smith, but I go by Zeb. Nobody calls me Zebulon. In fact, you're probably not even sure that you might not even know that Zebulon is my name, but it's Zeb Smith with a Y. And for some reason, I'm always about that Y. I guess when your name is generic as Smith, you want to make sure everyone knows it's not plain Smith.
Is it Zeb with a Z or an X?
I didn't even know Zeb could be spelled with a X, but that's cooler. Yeah, if I'm worried about the Y, that's my phrase. It's Zeb Smith with an X on a Y. And people are like, what?
So I'm going to put Saren, and the connection is sibling, and obligation, support music career.
Aw.
Yeah.
And what was your name again, Amelia, your character's name?
Maris. What is an obligation to Zeb? What does he really want? Just
make sure
love.
I get paid.
Yes, right.
But love is nice too. Acceptance is what I'm going for. You don't have to love me. You just got to accept me.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to. That's just the goal.
Gotcha.
What's kind of your goal, Maris?
What is my goal?
Yeah.
Well, my goal is to keep this family business afloat.
Oh yeah. Okay. My obligation to you is to help keep your stress down.
Aw.
Nice.
And then Zeb, my coworker connection. I think my obligation to you is friendship.
Love it.
And I've got moms, offspring, and support business. /life.
Life. I gave you life.
What are you going to put for your actual age?
That's interesting. I was thinking early to mid 20s, but I'm fine with whatever you think.
So the reason that's there is that the whole MacGuffin in the Blue Planet setting is this xenosilicate, the stuff they call Long John, that's being mined on the planet and used in genetic engineering. It's allowed the perfection of genetic engineering, which therefore includes the ability to stop the aging process. And so if you have enough money, you have essentially now immortal. And even though it's only been about 25 years that this technology has been available, if you were 20 when you started taking it, you're now 50, 55, and you still look 20. So obviously biosculpting and perfect plastic surgery can also make you look a lot younger. But you are actually getting people whose chronological age is outstripping their apparent age pretty dramatically.
That makes sense.
But you have to have the money to do that. And so we're getting, one of the tropes of the setting is that there's this, not only is wealth now separating people, but their genetics are now separating people into the healthy and the eternally young versus the aging and unhealthy.
Oh, interesting.
And so there's that social dynamic, but that's why in the profile and the features section, there is that apparent age bit.
I don't think we have that kind of money.
No.
Otherwise, our business wouldn't be.
You are transhuman, though, Ryan, so you might actually look quite a bit younger than your actual age.
So what do you want your actual age to be, Amelia?
I just put 25.
25.
If you said mid-20s.
I think 25 works as well. But my apparent age would just be like 21.
Sure.
So close, but...
My actual age is 35, but I look 45 because I was on Mars where there's not much of an atmosphere and it's hard on the skin.
I put my actual age is 25 and my apparent age is 25.
I'm going to change it to 19 because I want people to mistake us like me being like a younger sibling.
But actually you're 20 minutes older.
Or something like that, right? Like within days at least, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Can be like that time my coworker and I were both pregnant at the same time, and then we ran into each other at the hospital, but she still somehow managed to have her baby like 4 hours before I did, even though I was there first.
Yeah, what the heck?
It was rude.
Wait your turn.
So are we done with ties, or do we want to make additional one? I mean, you certainly could, like if you have characters that want, like if your character has a spouse or friends or a rival, whatever you want that connection to be, you could make more. And for all of these, for tracks, for tags, for ties, they emerge in play as well. NPCs that come up and become connected to your characters can become ties, and people are encouraged to do that as part of gameplay too.
Okay.
But I feel like we've probably pushed this button enough at this point.
Yeah, I think I have a healthy number of ties for our purposes.
Yeah, I don't want to name anything else. I'm just filling in my features over on this.
Yeah, I was doing that too.
So do we want to jump ahead to features? It is a category in our list.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we can backtrack to Biomods.
Because we already selected names.
Yep. We did.
Let's see. I'm going with she, they pronouns.
I'm going to go with they, them, his. Oh, sorry, they, them, theirs.
I went with she, her.
5'8".
I like that you're so specific. I was like, I don't know what in the far future water world what the average height is, but I did put my physique is unassuming, so I put average.
Oh, there you go.
Good. I noticed recently that we've left off our hair color category on here. It needs to be added in.
All right, what hair color are you going with, Amelia?
Well, see, my eyes are pale blue, so my hair is pale blue.
Oh, depending upon the biomods, you could get hair that changes color if you wanted to. You get hair that changes length and style, and it actually animates if you really want to.
Okay, so here's the thing.
So
I don't
like
need a biomod. My hair already changes length, Jeff.
There you go. they'll have the model with the fan blowing in their face so their hair moves. Like it could just be like that all the time.
All right. And I'm going to go with pale green and pale green for eye color and hair color.
Ooh, nice.
To kind of differentiate us, but to kind of also link us as siblings.
I love it.
Animated tattoos for complexion. That's interesting. That's like Maui.
Mm.
So I'm 1.5 meters tall, very slight, light brown eyes, very dark brown skin. My general style, I'm bald. Like it looks like it's not because I shaved my head. I'm just perfectly bald.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reserved and quiet generally, and in terms of general style. And my clothing is kind of sloppy cool.
Mm.
I think it's probably unintentional, but it's not really calculated, but sort of sloppy cool. And my parent Biomods, anybody who knows what a survivor mod looks like would know that I was one, but it's pretty subtle. And so it's not always apparent because a lot of Biomods are just invisible because they're internal, but a lot of them are very apparent, especially the cosmetic and aesthetic ones.
Okay. I think my general style will be trendy and flashy.
So the real question is, how do your moms feel about your aspiring to kind of break away from the family business and become a pop star?
Yeah, I don't know if it's, I think it's been holding me back from fully pursuing it. But I think it's only until I can find a way that it will help the business. Mm. Like, will I fully be able to like break myself off from that obligation and pursue it with gusto?
This feels very much like Hannah Montana meets like Remington Steele or something.
That makes sense.
I don't know what kind of biomods you would want.
Yeah, I think the only thing we really have left in terms of interesting character decisions to make would be the biomods.
Yeah.
As everyday characters, we don't have a lot of resources for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think, in fact, as a survivor mod, I'm pretty much tapped out already. That's my 25,000 plus. So really, I'm kind of in debt in terms of character creation there, but it's more about the backstory. And that's really what, that's the only guiding feature. So, and maybe it's worth mentioning in terms of game design, a lot of games like, at least earlier versions, I haven't played later versions of like Cyberpunk or Shadowrun, but there were limits imposed on hard limits on sort of the biomods or modifications you could get. And some of them were because they would affect things like your humanity, or they would give you negatives to other kinds of interactions. But that never felt, in the fiction, it didn't feel represented in a way that, especially in a hard science world where genetic engineering is just a tool, why couldn't you have all the biomods you wanted? So the only thing that really made sense about limiting them would be, could you afford them? Blue Planet still has capitalism. It didn't quite lean into a post-scarcity economy because then the premise of the game wouldn't work. So can you afford the biomods? And did you have time to get them? And do you have legal access to them, right? Because some of them are pretty much limited to specific kinds of service. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't make sense for you to have a gun built into your arm if you were just worked at a restaurant. So those are kind of the narrative limits around them, and really the only thing that kind of controls whether they appear in the characters or not, as far as the moderator is concerned. But as far as the guidance, it's 25,000 for everyday, 100 for exceptional, and limited only by the fiction for elite. Is there any particular thing that your characters already have some levels of biomods in that they are engineered. Mm-hmm. If you wanted something additional to that, one that I might suggest if we were going to play this game would be Implanted V. Almost everybody owns what's called a virtual interface, a VI or a V. And it is essentially a cell phone, but they are usually wearable or implanted. The virtue of them being implanted means that you can't lose it, and that you can communicate through it without talking. So you just think, and it translates to your receiver. You can access Comcore, the Poseidon's internet, all without it being obvious that that's what you're doing.
That sounds great.
So you'd have to have an implanted one to do that, but it would give us a great kind of like hive mind while we are out on our adventures. And it's relatively inexpensive. I think to do that is like 10 to 15 grand to have it installed, depending on the features you want. So that's a good one that tons of people have. I mean, it's very common. Of course, there's cosmetic things. You are a performer. Do you have any kind of like flashy cosmetic stuff that you want to have to, like, did you get your vocal cords modified so that you can sing better?
Maybe.
Or can you do like Mongolian over singing just by the development, by the modifications they made?
I did see one that was in this quick start guide that you had sent. The multi-glands. That was 17,000. Basically the ability to control your emotions on the fly.
Yep.
I think that would be really useful for singing to like get into the mood of the song.
You can hype yourself up. You can calm yourself down. Get rid of those pre-performance butterflies.
Yeah, and go with like a sad song. Just like put on the tears.
As a PI, it makes you a better liar.
Yeah,
because you can calm yourself down and not have the typical physiological response that comes with lying. And it makes it harder to detect for sure.
Yeah. So that one's 17,000. So that would give me 8,000 left.
You can also simulate a lot of drug effects. So if you just feel like getting high, you just think it and you're high.
Oh, yeah. I think my character would probably avoid that for the most part, unless like painkillers. If things were, if I got hurt because my physique is so low, I could probably like pop some internal Advil. Yep.
Little dopamine boost.
And then for like vocal cord enhancements.
That one. There are some vocal ones that they haven't been converted to the new edition yet.
Yeah.
So that you can fake your voice, like you can sound like anybody else. So a version of that would just be perfect pitch or something.
Yeah.
Right? Or multiple octaves, perfect pitch, harmonics.
It'd be interesting to be able to
your own background singer.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to harmonize with myself. So I think the remaining would just go into that vocal enhancer.
And the fun thing was, if you go over your 25,000 limit, you could be like paying that off secretly, like you got it done. Your moms don't know, and you're like trying to pay it off because it was expensive.
Yeah, I like that.
So I'm going with the implant and my survivor mod.
Awesome.
With the V implant.
What do you got, Amelia?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to go with the implant.
Yeah, it's called a implanted uplink, and it can actually be its own V, or it can just connect to your external V, so that you're thinking to the phone in your pocket, or the earrings you're wearing, or the necklace you have, or the thing that you've glued to your forehead that looks like a weird cult symbol, whatever it happens to be, the wearable V that you're using. So that, I believe,
yeah, that's pretty much everything.
All the features, that's it.
I don't think we need to go through gear or anything like that.
No. That's really the advice we give around gear is what's realistic for your characters to have.
Yeah.
Right.
It becomes important if you're washed ashore on a desert island after falling off of a boat. It matters exactly what you've got. But if we're running a PI business, there's certain things we'd probably have in the office or at home. And if it becomes like relevant to the plot to not have it, well, that's easy enough for the moderator to say, oh, that's kind of an expensive piece of gear and you broke yours last week. And so you gotta get a new one before you can do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. Very cool.
So that's it. That's Blue Planet characters. Blue Planet Recontact characters.
We did it.
Yeah, I really like this.
We made some people.
Goodness gracious. Very cool. And we've got names and everything. That wasn't even the last step that we did.
I know.
And you had a name before I did.
I know. It's because I was thinking about it because I knew it was coming, and I knew
there you go.
I'm really bad at it.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us for Blue Planet Recontact character creation.
It's been a blast.
It's been absolutely fun. I love this.
It was great.
Yeah. Jeff, do you want to remind people where they can find you online?
Sure. They can find me probably most readily on Twitter at BiohazardJeff. We have a website, www.biohazardgames.us. And right now, hopefully, you can find us on Kickstarter with our campaign to fund Blue Planet Recontact.
Yeah, very cool. And we'll have a link to the show notes for that.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you to everyone for listening. Please join us again for the next episode when we do our discussion block.
Call to action.
Yeah, like that.
I am really excited for this game. I really enjoyed the characters that we created this series. Next episode, we've got some great discussion for y'all. So don't miss out on that next week. But before we bid you adieu, we do have a couple call to action items for you.
Before I say those things, though, I'm really, really excited for the discussion portion of this. I think it's always better when we get to have the creators on the show. I think we get to have really good discussions, but I think that I really enjoyed this one. I think Jeff was really, really insightful about the work that he's doing on this game, and it was a lot of fun to talk about.
Absolutely.
First, if you've liked what you hear so far on today's episode and last week's, you can go check out the Blue Planet Recontact Kickstarter link in our show notes. There are plenty of new stretch goals in there, and it would be phenomenal to fill all of those in. But either way, the great news is if you back it now, you are for sure getting the game.
Absolutely. Also, don't forget this April is Podchaser's Reviews for Good campaign. Leave a review for your favorite podcasts on Podchaser, and they will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels. And if we creators respond, they will double that. Also, this works for both podcast and episode reviews, so go ahead and let us know what you think of your favorite episodes as well. We'll even read those right here. Like this review from Ilspove on Podchaser for Series 29.1, our L5R series with David Gordon Baresh.
Oh, of course I get to read this review.
Absolutely.
I picked this episode to start because I recognized the system. I got a fascinating glimpse into the player culture of the game I've read so much about, but never had a chance to play. Five Rings is one of the host's favorite systems, so the level of enthusiasm makes it easy to get excited along with them. Nice, approachable introduction to mechanics that can seem intimidatingly reliant on social intelligence and advanced roleplay. Also included the delightful detail that there is a crab clan. I love that. Impression. Great for players who enjoy testing their characters to destruction. Yes, that's absolutely correct. And also, yes, crab clan.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I love having seen that game through your lens. And it's something that I hope to play someday.
I think that was what made our Heroes Unlimited series fun for me too, in part, was because like you clearly enjoyed it. And I think the same thing with L5Rs. Like we both have that like love of these games, but also because we love them so much, we're so aware of the places where they are bad. You're like, I'll say the same thing about my children of like, I love them wholeheartedly with all of my being, but I am aware sometimes they're naughty. And I feel that way about my games too. Like, I love this game so much, but like, please don't wake me up early in the morning and please don't leave your underwear on the floor. Yeah,
RPGs, come on.
It's like that. Just exactly like that.
Just like that. Exactly. Well, that's all that we have for this episode. Next week's episode won't be nearly as long, but the discussion was really fantastic, as we mentioned. Until then, take care, everyone. Stay safe and keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter at CreationCast or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can be found in the show notes. If you'd like to leave us a rating or review, we have links to various review platforms out there, including Apple Podcasts, in our show notes. Also, check the show notes for links to our other projects. Thanks for joining us, and remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We will see you next time.
Now we gotta read some show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs.
Show blurbs. Character Creation Cast is hosted by the One Shot Podcast Network. If you enjoyed our show, visit oneshotpodcast.com, where you'll find other great shows like Campaign.
Campaign is an actual play podcast exploring long-form role-playing. The current campaign, Skyjacks, takes place in an original setting inspired by the music of the Decemberists, folktales, and classic adventure fiction. Join Liz Anderson, John Patrick Cohen, Tyler Davis, Johnny O'Mara, and Game Master James D'Amato as they tell a tale of daring sky pirates. Also, it's basically an elaborate retelling of Weekend at Bernie's. Just search for Campaign or James D'Amato on iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite podcast app.